Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome to Front and Center, where we focus on developments in the Philippines, legislation that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of these and more will be front and center. You can watch this program on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. That's Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And you can hear this broadcast on our audio streaming through PBS Evox receiver app. Also on our shortwave broadcast through shortwave frequencies. That's 12.020 megahertz, 15.640 megahertz, and 17.665 megahertz. And this is your host, Jerome Toledo. Let's begin Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
While we wait for our guest for today, as we tackle in the first half of the program, which is the establishment of a task force set up by the Bureau of Customs to monitor oil shipment here in the country that's amid the global oil supply amidst the Middle East conflict, because that initiative or task force is part of the government's effort to ensure the stable supply of petroleum in the Philippines amid the immediate effects of the Middle East conflict on global oil supply. And the Bureau of Customs, as we mentioned earlier, a task force to monitor the volume of oil imports in the country. So what is the task force all about, which is the BOC Oil Task Force? And also, how is this going to affect and benefit the people and also businesses that may be affected by the challenges brought by the conflict in the Middle East? But in the meantime, we will have more discussions regarding that particular topic as we tread through the program. So, all right. Okay, so we now have on the line now the spokesperson of the Bureau of Customs, through its spokesperson, Attorney Chris Bendio. Good morning, Attorney Chris. Thank you so much for joining us in the program Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. Regards from Customs Commissioner Ariel Pomoceno and the other officials and employees of the Bureau of Customs.
Okay, so the Bureau of Customs recently formed the BOC Oil Task Force. So while monitoring imports is a regular BOC function, I would like to ask, why is this necessary, the creation of this particular task force amid the challenges brought by the Middle East conflict?
I think the very purpose of the task force is to gather real-time information. So like what you said, it is a normal function of the Bureau of Customs to gather oil importation information. So there are three primary functions of the task force. No? One, to mandate our district collectors to report the influx, the importation of oil from their respective ports. Two, to request for information from our relevant oil stakeholders. So we'll be sending them letters for them to report as well their inventory and oil supply levels. And third, we will be issuing letters of authority and mission orders for the BOC personnel to physically inspect the oil depots and other oil storages. The intention here is for us to be able to have real-time data as to the supply levels of our oils nationwide. So based on that, we will now be either crafting policy or perhaps facilitating trade to increase the oil supplies in our country.
Okay. Well, Attorney Chris, the move is linked to tensions in the Middle East and the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So, how much of our current fuel supply is directly at risk due to these specific global routes?
If we will be basing it on the 2025 performance, the volume of oil importations from the Middle East amounts to 5,652,052,000,000 700,000 kilograms, which accounts for 25.9% of the total oil importations that we have. Now, in terms of duties and taxes, oil importations from the Middle East amounts to 83 billion. No, so that's how big it is. And in terms of excise taxes, that accounts for 50 billion pesos. So if we are talking about oil importations from the Middle East, those are the statistics. Those are the numbers that we have.
Okay, I would like to ask this, Attorney Bendijo. Are we expecting a fresh supply of oil in the country?
I'm sorry, are we expecting a?
A oil supply from oil producing countries?
Well, that's one thing that we have to determine as well, because we understand that the Middle East conflict, including the restrictions on travel in the Strait of Hormuz, would really substantially affect this supply chain. So either we have to look for alternative sources for oil. Other stakeholders can provide more supplies, or of course, on our end, we also have to rationalize our consumption and usage of the oil. So it's a balancing act as to, of course, the equation of economies would dictate that the less supply we have and the higher demand we have would really necessitate the effect of increasing the prices. So it's a balancing act, and we feel that the information that we can gather through the task force would be very material and substantial for policy making and for decision making.
Okay, so on this particular task force, Attorney Bendijo, that involves joint inspections with the Energy Department and the Bureau of Internal Revenue. So, what exactly are your teams looking for when they physically visit a storage terminal or a bulk depot?
This is a limited letter of authority or mission order. When I say limited, normally letters of authority are issued for purposes of determining payment of customs duties and taxes. In this instance, specifically for the task force, the mission order and the letter of authority will be limited to looking at the inventory and oil supply level only. So we will be cross-matching the report from our district collectors as to the importation of oil, the volume thereof, versus what is being reported by our stakeholders and our physical inspection of the same. So with that, we are able to determine if there is still supply of oil coming from importations. We are also able to determine if there are hoardings being done, if there is artificial manipulation of the variables in our economy, so that we can, the appropriate agency can make the appropriate action. So if it is a hoarding issue, we can go to the PCC or the DTI. If it is a any other issue, excise taxes, of course, decision making, that's policy on the policy side. So all the information that will be gathered by the task force is very relevant at this is to answer the situation.
Okay, so there's a whole of government approach in this particular task force, Attorney Bendio. But does this increase? I'm sorry. How is the major oil players and independent importers reacted to this stricter oversight? So are they being fully cooperative with this new reporting requirements?
Well, we are yet. I think today we will be sending out those letters, and I'm optimistic that they will be cooperating, because we have to understand that this problem is a nationwide problem. The entire country is at a very difficult situation, considering that we are very much dependent on oil supplies. Now, I've already mentioned the figures that oil importations from the Middle East accounts for 25.9% of the total oil importation. So that's one fourth. If you can imagine the revenues that we generate, one fourth of that is generated from oil importations from the Middle East. So I think with that, it's not only a whole of government approach, but rather the whole country should join forces, both the private and the government sector.
After all Filipinos are affected by this Middle East conflict. But if an importer is found with unmarked fuel, because there's still an oil smuggling activity that may or a situation that may happen. So if an importer is found with unmarked fuel or an inventory that doesn't match their declaration, what will be the penalty or immediate penalties for them?
Oh, definitely. The creation of the task force on the limitation of the LOA to inventory checking does not remove the power of the BOC to check smuggled fuel. So, if, for example, during the inspection pursuant to this task force, during the inspection it was determined that there is unmarked fuel, then we can, of course, still issue the necessary seizure and detention, forfeiture, and, of course, subject the responsible parties to unlawful importation of oil.
Okay, but also I would like to ask this. So, have there been any discrepancies between what oil companies report as their inventory and what is actually in their depots, Attorney Bendio?
Well, considering that the task force has just been created over the weekend, no, we will start issuing the letters to the stakeholders for them to make the reports. We'll also be identifying key stakeholders in the oil industry so that we can check their inventory. Again, this is not really focused on the customs and duties, but rather the actual determination of the oil supply levels that we have in the country for us to be able to make proper decisions. Maybe it may be through policy, trade facilitation, perhaps asking our alternative suppliers to increase their production if possible. All the information will be relevant to address those matters.
Okay. And a few more points before I let you go, Attorney Bendio. So, how does the task force work help to prevent hoarding or artificial price manipulation by local players during this crisis? The Energy Department is putting a notice to all those oil players to not take advantage of this situation. So, how does the task force work will prevent these kinds of activities?
Well, the information that we will be gathering will really determine whether or not there are leakages. Why? Because we are able to determine the total amount of volume in terms of importation, and we are also able to determine if the levels as dictated in their depots. So that being said, we are able to secure the accuracy of the determinations, if it will correspond with what has been declared as importations, and if there is consumption, if there's increase of consumption, we can detect leakages through these information that will be gathered by the task force.
Okay, okay, I understand that you have activity today, but one more question, Attorney Bendio. So, okay, we have established a task force for this kind of situation that we are facing right now, the Middle East conflict that affects the global oil supply. So we have a dedicated task force that we have just established. And also, there are predictions that this conflict may last up to several weeks or even months. So, are there even stricter measures on the horizon? Attorney Benio? Attorney Benio?
Tendency is some people will take advantage of this problem. So we also want to avoid oil smuggling. We want to avoid hoarding. And going back to the task force, the information that will be gathered from the reports from the district collectors as to the import volume, the levels of oil as stored in the oil depots and the stakeholders, and the consumption that we also have visibility on will really tell us if there is artificial manipulation or hoarding and of the oil supplies in the market.
Okay, and after all, that's part of the government's effort to ensure the stable supply of petroleum here in the Philippines. And with that, thank you so much for joining us in the program, Attorney Chris Bendio, the spokesperson of Bureau of Customs.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. And that was the spokesperson of the Customs Bureau, Attorney Chris Bendijo, as we talk about the efforts of the BOC regarding the oil supply disruption that is currently happening here in the Philippines, and that is due to the conflict in the Middle East. So when we come back, we will tackle another issue and developments in the Philippines, particularly the ruling that was released by the International Criminal Court, because the ICC has released a ruling that solidifies their January 26 ruling rejecting former President Rodrigo Duterte's interim release. And we will have a discussion with the ICC accredited lawyer attorney Gilbert Andres here in the program Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. But we will have a quick break here in the program. Don't go away. The program returns after this.
Magandang araw, si Ding Dong Dantes po ito. Dahil taon-taon tayong binibisita ng bagyo, kailangang handa tayong harapin ito. Naalala ko si Mami, meron siyang isang envelope kung saan nakatago ang mga importanteng dokumento para madaling kunin at dalhin kapag may bagyo. Ang misis ko naman, may nakahanda palaging emergency go bag na may lamang damit, gamot, pagkain, tubig at pera na kasya hanggang 3 araw sakaling kailanganin namin pumunta sa evacuation center. At syempre, ang toka ko, bago pa dumating ang bagyo, sinisilip ko na kung may mga butas ba yung bubong o ang ibang parte ng bahay na kailangang i-repair. Nakamonitor din ako sa updates ng pag-asa tungkol sa bagyo. May kanya-kanyang responsibilidad sa bahay para sure na ligtas ang buhay. Dahil #panatag ang may alam.
Maging panatag Pilipinas.
Sa isang bagong Pilipinas, hindi dapat makambang pamilyang Pilipino sa mga bayarin sa ospital. Kaya naman sa Zero Billing Policy, libre ang inyong paggamot sa lahat ng mga Department of Health hospitals. Mapa-inpatient, outpatient, o emergency services. Isama na rin ang mga mamahaling gamot, lab tests, therapy, at marami pang iba. Libre ang inyong paggamot. Ang pangangalaga sa kalusugan ng mamamayan ay ang ating pangunahing tungkulin dahil ang serbisyong medikal ay karapatan at hindi dagdag pasanin.
Mabilis ang trivia, dagdag talino. Heto na ang Dagling Kaalaman.
Alam niyo ba na ang salitang gender ay mula sa Latin word na ang ibig sabihin ay uri o klase at hindi agad kasarian? Noong sinaunang Egypt, may mga babaeng naging pharaoh tulad ni Hatshepsut. Ang New Zealand naman ang unang bansa na nagbigay ng karapatang bumoto sa mga babae noong 1893. Dito sa Pilipinas, kinikilala noon ng mga babaylan, mga pinunong espiritual na kadalasang babae o gender fluid. At tandaan, ang gender equality ay kabilang sa 17 Sustainable Development Goals ng United Nations. Kaya't ang pagkakapantay-pantay ng kasarian ay tungkulin nating lahat.
Kaunting kaalaman na malaking dagdag talino. Abangan muli ang susunod na Dagling Kaalaman.
Mas pinadali na ang government transactions sa tulong ng eGov.ph Super App. Pwedeng-pwede mo nang magawa ang lahat ng ito. I-download ang eGov app sa iyong smartphone o tablet mula sa App Store o Google Play Store. Pagkatapos, ilagay ang iyong mobile number at i-authenticate gamit ang one-time PIN o OTP para marehistro ang iyong account. Saka ilagay ang iyong mga pangunahing impormasyon at kumpletuhin ang facial recognition technology para sa verifikasyon ng iyong pagkakakilanlan. Para sa mas mabilis at mas maayos na serbisyong panggobyerno, gamitin na ang eGov.ph Super App.
Mga kababayan, si Ding Dong po ito. Alam niyo bang mataas ang tsansang magkasunog pagkatapos ng malakas na lindol? Kaya naman pagligtas ng bumalik sa loob ng bahay o building, i-check agad ang mga kawad ng kuryente. Kung may nakitang sira, patayin ka agad ang main switch. At ang pinaka-importante, i-report ito sa otoridad. Huwag mo nang i-DIY yan, ha? Naku, baka mas malaking problema pa ang sumabog. Tandaan, i-check ang sira, patayin ang main switch, i-report sa otoridad. #panatag ang may alam.
Laging panatag Pilipinas.
Mabilis ang trivia, dagdag talino. Heto na ang Dagling Kaalaman.
Alam mo ba, halos wala palang silbi ang ating earlobes o laylay ng tenga? Akala ng ilan, nakakatulong ito sa pagdinig dahil parang funnel ng tunog. Pero sabi ng mga siyentista, wala talaga itong mahalagang tungkulin sa pagdinig. Gayunman, puno ng nerve endings ang earlobes kaya sensitibo ito sa haplos at maaaring may papel sa social bonding o pakikitungo sa kapwa. At syempre, may malaking halaga ito sa kultura, mula sa ear piercing hanggang sa ear stretching at sa iba't ibang tradisyon. Kaya kahit maliit lang, ang earlobes ay may malaking ambag sa pagpapahayag ng ating pagkatao.
Kaunting kaalaman na malaking dagdag talino. Abangan muli ang susunod na Dagling Kaalaman.
Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Still with me, Jerome Toledo. And while we wait for our next guest for this program, we will have to read an information regarding the upholding the January 26th ruling of the International Criminal Court or ICC, as the ICC Appeals Chamber has rejected the appeal of former President Rodrigo Duterte's camp seeking his interim release from detention. The appellate court upheld the ICC pretrial chamber 1's January 26 decision to continue holding the former president at the ICC detention center in the Netherlands due to the flight risk concerns. The defense earlier raised one ground of appeal and made a case that the pretrial chamber 1 erred in fact and in law and abused its discretion when it disregarded a report concerning Duterte's health condition that it previously submitted on the basis that it came from a party to the proceedings. The appeals chamber argued that the defense report does not include any new information concerning Mr. Duterte's health condition, as the two medical practitioners it selected did not conduct any new examination of the former chief executive. And just recently, the ICC concluded its pre-trial chamber proceeding. Both defense and the prosecution panel have presented their evidences and their case at the court, and there are lots of the discussion and also the presentation of evidences that discusses about the previous drug war of the Duterte administration. So both panels presented their evidences and their cases, and then as the pretrial chamber proceedings has been wrapped up or terminated, it will take around 60 days to find out and to determine if the former president will face a full-blown trial at the International Criminal Court. So we will get the reaction of that particular proceeding with the ICC accredited lawyer attorney Gilbert Andres in the program, but we're still establishing our line with him. So we will try to have attorney Gilbert Andres, the ICC accredited lawyer, and at the same time he holds the executive director position at the Center for International Law Philippines. So we will have attorney Gilbert Andres on the line, but in the program. But front and center will be right back after these short messages. Don't go away.
Paano nga ba mag-register para magkaroon ng schedule sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center? Narito ang mga dapat gawin. Gamit ang iyong mobile device, pumunta sa eGov.ph app. Pwede itong i-download mula sa Apple App Store o sa Google Play Store. Gumawa ng account. Ilagay ang email address, valid mobile number, pagkatapos ay makakatanggap ka ng one-time code sa iyong email. Gamitin ang code sa eGov app para sa verification ng iyong account at ng mga impormasyong ibinigay. Congratulations! Meron ka ng eGov.ph app account. pwede mo na ma-access ang iba't ibang serbisyo ng gobyerno kabilang ang mga serbisyo sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center.
This is a public service announcement.
Maging handa sa oras ng sakuna. Para sa iyo at sa iyong pamilya, laging siguruhin. Go Bag ay nakahanda at naglalaman ng mga sumusunod. Ilang pirasong damit, ready-to-eat na pagkain at inuming aabot ng 3 araw. Personal na gamit para sa inyong hygiene. First aid kit kabilang ang alcohol, bandages, gamot sa lagnat, ubo at sipon, pati na rin ang inyong vitamins at maintenance medicines. Maglagay ng pito, flashlight, lighter o posporo. Huwag kalimutan ang mga charger o power bank. At higit sa lahat, isama ang mga importanteng gamit gaya ng inyong mga legal na dokumento, IDs, ATM o passbook, insurance at iba pa.
This is a public service announcement. Public service announcement
From PBS, Presidential Broadcast Service and Radyo Pilipinas.
This is a public service announcement.
Discipline is the key. Umiwas sa aksidente sa daan. Ang pagmamaneho ay may kaakibat na responsibilidad, hindi basta mapaandar lang ang sasakyan. Kilatisin ang sarili, ang kahandaan sa manibela, siguruhing inyong konsentrasyon ay hindi magagambala. Importante rin na ating laging isipin, init ng ulo ay huwag pairalin, bagkus kaligtasan ng lahat ang siyang dapat unahin. Isang mahalagang paalala mula sa Presidential Broadcast Service at Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko, 738.
This is a public service announcement.
Public service announcement
From PBS, Presidential Broadcast Service at Radyo Pilipinas, Radyo Publiko, 738.
Hi, si Dingdong Dantes po ito. Pahiram lang ako ng 1 minuto mo. I know aware kang kailangan mong takpan ng ilong at bibig mo gamit ang dust mask kapag may pumutok na bulkan. Pero, paano kung wala kang mask? Ganito, kumuha ka ng basang panyo o bimpo para ma-filter ang nilalanghap mong hangin. Tapos, i-check mo rin syempre ang mga kasama mong bata at matanda kung may suot silang mask para safe rin sila sa asphalt. O tandaan mo lagi yan kasi #panatag ang may alam.
Maging panatag Pilipinas.
And welcome back to Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Still with me, Jerome Toledo. And like we mentioned earlier, we will have the ICC accredited lawyer, Attorney Gilbert Andres, to get his side on the recent upholding of the January 26 ICC ruling that rejecting the appeal of former President Rodrigo Duterte's camp to seek his interim release from detention. Good morning, Attorney Andres. Thank you so much for joining us in the program Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good morning, Jerome.
Okay, so as someone who works closely with the families involved, so how are the victims' family reacting to the news that the ICC upheld its January 26 decision to reject the interim release of the former president? So basically or essentially putting Mr. Duterte still in custody in The Hague.
Well, they are actually welcoming it because they see it as actually in accordance with the Rome Statute and with the current conditions. So they actually welcome it.
Okay. So they welcome the decision of the court that upholds that upholds the ruling that rejecting the release of a former president. So meaning to say the president will still stand trial in the ICC. So could you explain in simple terms the primary reason why the ICC appeals chamber rejected the request for interim release? So what specifically constitutes a flight risk in the eyes of an international court? So just for the benefit of our listeners.
Okay, just to be very specific, this is actually a appeals chamber decision which rejected the appeal of the defense. Because remember, under the rules of procedure, Rule 118, there's actually a need to review the continued detention of any detainee every 120 days. So if we recall, it was last September 2025, wherein the pretrial chamber actually decided to continue to not to grant the application for interim release. So every 4 months from that, there's a need to review it. So that's 4 months from September, that's January 2026. And the pretrial chamber actually held that there's a need for the continued detention. And from that decision of January 2026, the defense appealed. Now, the main argument of the defense was that there's a report by their own panel of experts. So they have their own experts, and these experts made their own report, and then they used it as their ground to say that due to the alleged report of their own expert that there's no flight risk for Mr. Duterte. But in the appeals chamber decision, the appeals chamber actually differentiated the issue of health from the issue of the continued detention. So these are actually separate issues.
Okay. So, meaning to say the submitted medical reports deemed insufficient?
Well, what the appeals chamber decided that it was within the discretion, and it was a reasonable within the reasonable discretion of the pretrial chamber to only consider its own expert panel report. Because remember, the pretrial chamber appointed its 3-person panel, and they actually submitted their report last December 5. So the pretrial chamber did not consider by such as that of the defense, and the appeals chamber held that that's within the reasonable discretion of the pretrial chamber to do that.
Okay, so that decision, Attorney Andres, would be final, or are there other legal avenues that defense can take to seek temporary liberty while the case is ongoing? Is it the same thing that like we do in regular court?
Okay, this is already final. As to the issue of the finality, of the January 26, 2026 decision of the pretrial chamber. Okay, so that's already final because this is already the appeals chamber. Now, there's actually a separate annual review. So aside from the review every 120 days, there's also that annual review of the detention of any detainee. So that annual review actually occurred, at least the arguments on it, last February 27 during after the confirmation of charges hearing. So we're still awaiting the decision of the pretrial chamber on the annual review.
Okay, and that's
detention.
And that's one time, once a year.
That's once a year, correct. So you can actually see here that there are actually internal checks and balances within the ICC itself as to the detention of a person. That's why no one can actually accuse the ICC of not giving due process, because it always gives due process to any detainee.
Oh, okay. So that particular check is upon the discretion discretion of the ICC or the court.
Actually, it's a requirement. So there's a review every 120 days. And then there's the annual review, and it's actually, all of these are requirements by the ICC rules of procedure.
Oh, okay, very well said. Okay, so for our listeners following the timeline, and the case itself of the former President Rodrigo Duterte. So what is the current status of the pre-trial chamber proceedings? What specific phase of the investigation or trial are we in right now? I believe we just concluded the pre-trial chamber, but what's next?
Okay. So right now, number one, we are awaiting the decision of the pre-trial chamber on the confirmation of charges. So that will be more or less, I think, April 28, because the pre-trial chamber has 60 days from February 27. So that's more or less April 28, wherein we expect the pre-trial chamber on its decision on the confirmation of charges. Next is there's also the issue of jurisdiction that's before the appeals chamber, and we're also awaiting the decision of the appeals chamber on the jurisdictional challenge. And then third, we're also awaiting the decision of the pre-trial chamber on the annual review of the continued detention of Mr. Duterte. So I think these are the three main issues that we are awaiting for resolution.
Okay. Should this or if the pre-trial chamber deems that the Mr. Duterte will face a full-blown trial, how many trials are we expecting? Is this going to be a weekly basis or daily basis or monthly basis? What will be the timeline?
Okay, the timeline. Let's say, assuming that there will be a confirmation, although that's still to be decided. So there will be in the meantime, there will be a preparation for the trial. So that occurs for any case before the ICC, and it takes at least 6 months for that to occur. And so more or less, the earliest would be October of this year if this will proceed to trial. That's the earliest for the start of the trial. But remember, we're still awaiting the decision of the pre-trial chamber. Now, as to the
how often the trial will play coming in October?
Yes, although October is merely an approximation, that's the earliest.
Yeah.
If it's confirmed to proceed to trial. It will really depend on what the trial chamber will actually schedule, but expect it to be continuous. Expect it to be like the one in the confirmation of charges hearing. Like, for example, it's just 3 hours per day, and then there's a break between the week. Although, Jerome, this is really going far ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the next major dates that we are expecting. So April 27, and if the court will proceed the trial of Mr. Duterte into a full-blown trial, that will be in October. So those are the anticipated.
October will be the earliest. Although it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year for the preparation for trial to occur. So it can be next year, it can be October.
Okay, and that depends on the decision and scheduling of the International Criminal Court regarding the trial of former President Duterte.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. And with that, thank you so much for joining us in the program, for providing some details regarding this particular matter. Thank you so much, Attorney Gilbert Andres, the ICC accredited lawyer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. And with that, we now conclude this edition of Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Together with our technical team, headed by Ms. Susan Aison. On Warcast, we have Justine Osias, and audio streaming, we have Mr. Vicente. And this is your host, Jerome Toledo. Until next time, mabuhay.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.